Good afternoon. I am Betty Jane Tilley, and this is February the 8th. I am here on behalf of the Etowah Valley Historical Society's Oral History Committee, and I get to interview my husband of 55 years, Joe A. Tilley, that was born in Bartow County. And Joe, good afternoon. We are at WBHF, your home of 38 years. We'll get to that in just a moment, but tell us, let's begin. Where were you born?
You can't say any date and time because 38 years is just gone by so fast, and I met so many great people here, and it's been a wonderful life. And I don't know, I was born on one side of Plant Boyne, raised on the other side of Plant Boyne, and ended up in the middle. That's where we live now, at Tilley Mill on New Harley Creek. But my grandparents moved there in 1924 when they lost their farm.
And their names were?
Alvin, John, Tilley, and
Delta.
And Delta, not Delta Dawn, but Delta Tilley. And they moved down from Blairsville when they built the lake up there. They sold their land for $1 an acre, and they came to Bartow County and bought land for 50 cents an acre in pine log. And then along came the Depression and wiped them out, and they were doing poultry, eggs, and they had egg cartons that said, and we have a couple of those that said laid fresh daily. I don't know how else you could get a fresh egg that wasn't laid daily, but anyway, they moved to U Harley when the government had the plan to buy farms and land, and I can't remember the name of it, but anyway, so my parents bought a farm on Big Pond Road, and my grandfather bought a farm in downtown U Harley, as it turned out. And so I spent a lot of my childhood in U Harley, downtown U Harley, and all that, and so now we're annexed into the city of U Harley, and we live on the old Hardin Bridge Road, and GPS don't know the bridge is out, so we get 18-wheelers and everybody else coming in. But
well, let's go back to your parents. Your mother, Gladys, met Pete.
Yeah, but she was teaching at Pine Log, and she was boarding at Pine Log. She started teaching when she was 16 years old over in Cobb County, and then she got a job here, and she came to she was a one-room school over on Big Pond Road, on the corner of Big Pond Road and Old Alabama Road, near where we were raised and born and where we live now. And so she met my daddy. They had a big, where we live now at the Tilley Mill. It always went by a different name, but it went by the name of the owner of the mill at the time. And so it's been McCormick, and it's been so many different things. And Moody, and Jim Moody, bless his heart, he's a great guy. And we go to all of his talk, we own his books, and he's at the History Center, and he's been very appreciative of what we did to preserving the area and the bridge and so forth.
Well, your parents met there at a May Day picnic.
That's right.
And they eloped and married and came back.
Yeah.
Lived in a one-room house for a year.
Yeah, and my brother was born there, and then
Mac,
and when he was like, I guess, a year old, 2 years old, they moved over to Beasley Road and lived with Miss Beasley, and that, of course, that's where Plant Boyne is. That was the first, some of the first property that Plant Boyne bought when they came to U Harley, and I don't remember that year, but I don't know the year, but it's been a long time. They are great neighbors and great taxpayers. So.
Well, since we are here on February the 8th of 2020, it's interesting to note your parents were married the first day of February.
Had 4 children, and all 4 was born in February. We had to have good family planning because she had to chop cotton and teach school, and so we were dirt farmers. We had mules. We were mule farmers. And I remember when I was a child, I was looking out the front window and I saw these 2 guys. And why I knew they was from Alabama, I don't know. But they had a mule, and they brought a pole up there and set it in our front yard. And a few days later, we had electricity. Then we had a well. We had indoor plumbing, which was wonderful. I mean, if you never had it, wouldn't know.
Right. Well, let's talk about your early family life briefly, because you were on a self-sustaining farm. So explain that.
Well, we grew most of everything. We ate what we grew, and we had gardens, and we had, of course, we had to have, we had cash crops like cotton and corn and so forth, and we sold those and bought sugar and flour and things. But we killed our own pork and processed it, and our own bacon and whatever else, chitlins and everything to go. And then we had cows and we had mules. And then we bought, and then he finally got a tractor. And so, but we were cotton farmers, and I don't know, it was a great life. We were poor and didn't know it, so to speak. So.
Well, we'll speak briefly about this, but your mother at 16 did teach in a one-room
right.
school. And about 1955, the county said, all right, you've got to go back and get your degree.
That's right.
She had 4 children. She went to Oglethorpe, got her degree, came back, and taught in the Bartow County schools for like 38 years, and she is on her own oral history. But your father was always a farmer and did row crops and sold them in town in Cartersville.
Right.
But let's move on. Now, they had Mac, then you, then Phil, he's in Rockmart, and then Aragon, and Jane is in Demarest, Georgia. But did your parents, they worked all of you pretty hard on the farm?
Yeah, we were poor white farmers. Any way you look at it, there's no way out. But we lived. I remember when we got electricity. I got to tell you about the electricity, because we could now have a Christmas tree, and we had those little bubble lights. And I've said this a million times about, you only had to tell you one time, don't touch that bubble, because you touch that little bubble and
your fingers were burnt.
You were permanently with that little bubble.
Right.
But we lived well. I mean, we didn't starve. We had tenant farmers, and we worked other people's land too, and they were right thrifty and would support us well. So we never went hungry, so to speak. And we have a big family. My uncles and aunts. It was raised where we live now, down at the mill. He farmed. He was the manager of the Conyers property, and at that time the Conyers owned a lot of land, much land in Bartow County, and there's a Conyers subdivision in Cartersville, and my grandfather, I saw some deeds where he'd bought lots in there when they were developing that, and so he was pretty thrifty with raising those children, and. They didn't starve. They made it through the depressions and the wars and so forth. And I guess the Great Recession has changed everything. And then along came FDR with the farm loans, and that helped. One of the biggest things. But now that property's been subdivided, and that's where U Harley School, and behind the U Harley School, and U Harley downtown U Harley. And so forth. And so when they were building that bridge over Chulio Road, they parked all the on Etowah River. They parked all the big equipment in his yard down there, and we'd go down and play on those tractors. And that was one of my greatest thrills in my childhood, and I remember them doing that. So I was saying to the group last week, now we need a bicycle path, because U Harley's moving on up, and that's our hometown. We are annexed into the city of U Harley. U Harley has 4 zip codes, so we got a Taylorsville zip code, and I guess it's fine. It all works.
Well, your parents paid for their farm in 8 years,
That's
which
right.
was just almost unheard of.
That's right.
And I know she had 4 children when she went back to school, so it was up to you, I know, to take care of your sister Jane while they farmed the fields.
And my brother Phil.
And your brother Phil. Now, one of the things to talk about your telephone. How long did it take you all to get a telephone?
Well, many years. We had to pay a lady that lived over on Drummond Swamp.
Miss Powell.
Right. Miss Powell, across from Michael, and they had to come up with $100 to get access to get a telephone. So we get this phone in. We got 8 party lines, and so when the phone rang, you could hear 7 other people answer. And it's great, but you didn't stay on that phone. There was nothing going on. There was no secrets. My daddy paid the $100. We got the 8 party line, and it was so funny. And the telephone office was right over at the end of the bridge, the present bridge on Church Street. And Wilma, oh bless her heart, I can't remember her name. She went to Taylorsville School, and I knew her family. She was our operator, and we would call her and we'd say, Wilma, would you call the dentist and make us a dental appointment for at 4 o'clock or something? And she said, yeah, I'll take care of it. Or we would call and pick up the phone, and the operator said, number please, and we'd say, Wilma, would you call Mama and tell her we're working in the field and we'll be back at 6 o'clock if you call at 5. And it was just, you just couldn't do that anymore. I mean, that's the way it worked. People looking after each other.
Well, let's talk about school at Taylorsville.
Well, I was over there a long time, and I thoroughly enjoyed school. I didn't want to leave. I loved it, and I guess my senior year in high school was the only year I ever had perfect attendance, and the reason was I was the bus driver. And if you were going to be 18 on your next birthday and you were 17 years old, however that works, you could drive a school bus. So
they were private
buses.
owned.
It was private buses, had the private routes, that's right. And so I would go down, and my route started down on the Floyd County line. And I'd have to get up on those cold mornings and crank that old bus. And they were building 411 then, and I'd meet those big old plows and those big old tractors in the fog and all that. It was very dangerous. But I loved that job, and I'd pick those children up, bring them back to U Harley, and then I'd take all the high school children through the covered bridge over to 113 and take them to Taylorsville. And that's the only year I've had, like I said, I ever had perfect attendance. But it was great, and some of the funniest things, the children, and I told people all the time, my motto was, light them if you got them. I had 8th graders smoking on my bus if they had their own cigarettes, as long as they didn't smoke mine.
They rolled their own back then.
They rolled their own.
Well, now, and you talked about Tina
Floyd.
Tina Garrison Floyd
yeah,
was one of your...
Yeah. And she came up to me one night in the funeral home, and I was working at a visitation, and she said, do you remember that time the bus went dead and you made us all get off and push the bus, and when it cranked, you tried to sling mud on us? I said, that wasn't me, that's my brother. She said, no, it was you. But she and Dillard Gentry was Dillard Gentry was the worst passenger I had, and I gave him a hard time. He gave me a hard time, and I gave him a hard time. But I loved it, and those children, I still see them, some of them periodically. They say you was my bus driver, but I don't know.
Who was one of your favorite teachers at Taylorsville?
Well, I'd have to say I had a lot of great teachers, and Minta Ward, Dr. Ward's mother was, and we went to church with them, and she was my star, my hero, and she got me through school, and
Reader's Digest.
Reader's Digest.
Got
yes.
you through school.
Betty wants me to tell you about Reader's Digest. She had me read Reader's Digest, and I guess that's my best education came from Reader's Digest. Until this day, I read Reader's Digest cover to cover every month, and I've been doing it since high school, and even when I was in the Army, I read Reader's Digest.
Well, you're coming up, your class reunion is going to be 60 years this June.
That's right, 60 years. Yeah, we had a big graduating class. There was 20 of us, 23, I guess. Yeah, 23. But unfortunately we've lost several members.
But you're close. So you're a close class.
We're real close, absolutely close. Yes, we really are. And I'll give Nell Tidwell a big hand on that because she keeps us all in line. But we meet at our house down at Tilley Mill now, and I'm trying to get them to do it more often than every 5 years. But I think it's great to see those children. We got a lot in common, and of course they like every other group.
Well, when you graduated, you went straight into the Army.
Yeah, my mama was going to send me to college, and I didn't think everybody ought to go to college, so I thought I'd take a shortcut and go to the military because I wanted to be, for some strange reason, I thought I wanted to be in telephones and installing phones and that sort of thing. And of course, I had a lot of jobs, before I went in the Army. And
Where was your basic training?
Well, I went to Fort Jackson, South Carolina for basic training. The second aid I went to over into I can't even think of that. Augusta. Thank you. Fort Gordon.
And then Uncle Sam sent you to Germany.
Yes, that's right. And I wanted to go. I wanted to go to Germany, and so I did. And I stayed 27 months. And then I came home, and I was there when the wall was built in Berlin, and it was very, very, I couldn't explain it to you because it was just real strange circumstances, and that's why I have a lot of admiration for our soldiers, and I've always been a veteran, and I've always belonged to the American Legion. The commander of the American Legion said I was the sorriest member they ever had. I went over and joined up and never went to any of the meetings.
Joe, can you tell me about your first full-time job when you got back from the Army?
Well, I thought I had to have a car, and I couldn't have a car without having a job, so I had to go to work after I got out of the Army, because they sent me home. They had so many, in my MOS, they had so many people in that MOS that, and that means you're training. And so my hero, John F. Kennedy, saved my life. I always give him credit for that, because it was trying times, and it was that's the most trauma thing to see grown men running and crying and praying because they just knew we were dead. And when he said he could cross that Rhine River in 24 hours. But let me get back to this. When I came home, I couldn't find a job. I mean, it was hard, and that was 1963. And so I was doing different things, and I saw this ad in the paper and applied for a job at the newspaper office, and they needed a truck driver. And I went down on a Saturday morning, and Billy Fleetwood was filling up the Coke machines. He was about 6 years old. And John Fleetwood, we had an interview, and your grandfather told John, said, "You hire that boy, I knew his mama." She wrote for the paper many years, and so Mr. Milton and my mother had a great relationship, and I loved him and his wife, your grandmother. And as time went on, I got to know them really well. And I don't know, he gave me a job, and jobs were really scarce. And I was moving my job was to move the newspaper from Main Street down to Tennessee Street, 249 South Tennessee Street. And so I was out there moving this heavy equipment, and the bells was ringing when John F. Kennedy was assassinated. And I went in and on the AP, and Louis Justice had me over there working on the type. Well, you was there, and Betty could operate a linotype machine, and it was all cold metal to lead to make those letters, and not to get into all that, but I would cheat on reading that type. You had to read it upside down. I'd get me a mirror and put it on there and read it so I could read to know what I was doing. But I worked for delivering. We had a store in Marietta and a store in Cartersville, and eventually I left and I went to Sears and Roebuck in Rome. Yeah, and we were there, and of course you were going short of college, and we got to know each other real well then, of course, and we got married in 1964 at the First Baptist Church, and we moved to Rome, and we stayed in Rome. We had a house in Sherwood for 3 years, and then I was talking to John one day, and he came into Sears and Roebuck. I was working at Sears and Roebuck. I guess I went to one of those inspirational speakers when I was going to off-campus center, and they had a class of law or something, and this guy said, talking about salesmen, he said, if you get a plaque and you got an achievement plaque, burn the plaque. Don't burn it. It's made out of lacquer. He said, go strive for something bigger or better. And I thought, that's the best advice anybody ever gave me. So when I left Sears and Roebuck and came back to Cartersville to run the office supply store, I didn't know what I was doing, and I didn't have a clue what was going on, but it turned out to be great the way it worked out. But what I regret was that I didn't go back to the break room and get my plaque that said, Joe Tilley, the first salesman to sell $250,000 $150,000 in a single year, 12-month period. And so, but I didn't save that.
You've always said you got your education at Sears.
That's right. I got my education standing on that terrazzo floor. That's right, selling those big ticket items. And that was tough.
We came back to Cartersville.
That's right. We came to Cartersville because I talked to John, and I was painting our house, and I just got thinking, well, here I am. I'm gonna have to move. I'm gonna have to move to go up with Sears and Roebuck. I'm gonna have to move, and unfortunately, it worked out that way because they went under, and I floated on down the creek. But anyway, I loved it. I had several offers. They sent me to a couple of places to look, and we decided we didn't want to do that. So then I came back, and John said, "Yes, you come and you can, we'll remodel the old building across the street and at the old Hale's Sausage Company." Yes, everybody will remember the old freezer locker in the projects. And so we were right across the way. Now that's the editor's office where our store was. We had that little store in there, and it worked out really good. And we got involved in the community, and I started getting involved in the community. And I was working. I'd work all night on the daily, on the weekly paper at the newspaper, and still help them. But I was doing the store too. So then a few years later, we decided to get out of that and sell out. And so Ivan Allen came along, and they wanted to be in Cartersville. They wanted a franchise in Cartersville. They had 18 stores at that time, and I had the smallest store of all the stores. But I had a good record. I had good employees. I had great employees. I couldn't have made it without my employees. But we were very successful, and we did. And then I got into auctioning during that time, and all this kind of stuff. Many things.
Well, let's back up just a tad. In 1968, we had Carrie Beth KK Tilley, now Smith,
Yes.
married to Carter Smith, and they have two daughters, Maggie Smith and Marley Smith.
Yes.
We'll come back to that in a minute. Then we had Lori
J. Popham.
Popham, and she married Alan Popham,
Yeah.
and they have a son, Brandon, and a daughter, Courtney. And we'll just stop right there on all of that. But we lived in Cartersville on Mission Road,
That's right.
and we moved to then Tilley Mill bought the property in 95, and we still live on Yellow Brick Road. We got to name the road. But I want you to backtrack to talk about your Chamber of Commerce. One of the
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. I want to tell you that I got involved in everything. I don't know. I guess my greatest reward was the development of Rose Lawn and saving Rose Lawn, because when you were a child, you knew E. Dargan Cole's mother real well, and Dargan told me that he would sell me that property for $60,000 in finance, and I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it, and I couldn't see doing it, building it up. But I didn't want to lose it either, so I was talking to Frank Moore and Olin Tatum, and I was giving them a hard time about restoring everything. So they said, well, we're going to form a committee. They started selling little stamps, 50 cents a lot or something, raising money and all that. So Frank Moore said, we're going to organize, and you're going to be on that board. You've given us such a hard time about it. We're putting you on that board. So I go into the board meeting, and the first thing they do is say, well, you're going to be the chairman of the board. And I said, oh, I don't have time for this. And they said, yes, you are too. Frank Moore said, you're going to be. And Frank, I knew Frank. He was a star basketball player at Taylorsville School, and he and I were great friends. I knew his family, all of his family, and we were great friends. And Olin Tatum and our county commissioners, and don't let me leave out Wayne Self. He was good too, and all of them that was. But so when I get to the board, we have a board, and we have secretaries, and Jimmy Davis I said, if she'll take this, I'll do it. I'll be the chairman. And so we started, and we really, Olin didn't want to spend any more money, and Frank wasn't going to spend any more money either on Rose Lawn. It was really deteriorating. So we had a one day I told Miss Jimmy, I've talked to this gentleman, and he's going to come and talk to us about saving the roof, because the roof was caving in and it was rotting in. And Olin said, I'm not spending a nickel on it. We're not spending another nickel on this building. And I said, I don't blame you, but let me see if I can find somebody. So I asked this gentleman to come and meet with Jimmy and me. And when we got there, I said, I know that your wife loves this area and loves this, and you've been very fortunate. You got a great business, and we need an endowment. And he said, well, who will know about this? I said, you and me and Miss Jimmy. And he said, okay. So he said, how much got to have? And I told him what it was. I can't remember what it was. And he said, I'll have you a check tomorrow at 2 o'clock. And so you go pick it up, so and so and so. So I said, so that's really what saved that building, I can tell you that. So we got painters, and we came in, and L.C. Cornwell came in and mixed the paint and did the painting, and it
They
just went
restored
from
it
there.
back.
Restored the building, yes. But then I couldn't, but I would tell Miss Jimmy, I can't come to all these meetings, and she would call me and say, well, I've got a group coming in, I want you to come speak to them about it. And I said, look, I'm selling pencils, I'm busy over here and selling printing, but we had a great rapport, and I am so proud. And then 1995, I guess it was, they had the first Rose Lawn show, and we went over there, and I saw that picture of LC and
The downtown painters.
downtown.
Yeah, the window cleaners.
The window cleaner.
Red, green, and
Red,
LC.
green, and LC, yes. And there they were, and she painted that up in our village. I'm sorry, the artist.
Terry Barrier. And we ended up buying
That's
that.
right. And it won first
for,
place.
She said, if you let me place it in Roselawn, and we still have that.
Yes.
It's one of our favorites.
Yes.
Let's go on and talk about the Chamber of Commerce.
Well,
And how you introduced.
well, I had to get into the Chamber of Commerce because I knew that if I could help them, they would help me bring an industry in. And I knew that Cartersville was growing, and we were doing real well in Ivan Allen and Fleetwood Office Supplies. We were very fortunate, and sold a lot of printing, we sold a lot of furniture. And I want to say something nice about Tony McStats. He was so good to me. He was my competitor, but if I really got down in the deep, I called Tony, and he knew the answer to everything. And so I want to give him a good praise for that too. And
even as competitors,
yes,
you
he was
were
my
great
competitor.
friends.
That's right, he was my competitor. But if
And helped each
if
other.
I had something I couldn't handle, if we couldn't handle the newspaper, Tony McStat couldn't
Right.
could
He
do
was,
it.
he was a good person.
Yes, and
Well-
still a good friend, and remained a good friend for years. And I give him a lot of credit for that, because we did the ballots for voting ballots for a lot of new municipalities, and he could set those things and get them all without a hitch. And I'd have to go to Chatsworth and all these places to pick them up, and he would print them and so forth. But I was real lucky with employees. I had some of the greatest employees in the world, and I guess I don't know. I guess my greatest claim to fame was if I had an employee that called me and said, "I don't feel good today. My baby don't feel good," and I said, "Well, just take the day off and come in whenever you're ready," and I would pay them for that day. I would never say, "Well, I'm gonna dock your pay" or anything. And so I think that was I figured that out when I was at Sears, that was important to people. So if I was successful, it was because I had good employees. And talking about, I won't go into office managers because I had so many good employees. I'm gonna forget somebody, so I won't start naming all the employees. Unfortunately, I have to call the roll with my own children. I can't remember their names either. So.
Well, let me stop you. One year, Bill Shadden, you were on the Chamber of Commerce board, and he said, "You're president. You're the next president." And you had to hire a, did they call a manager or
Yes, right.
directors or whatever?
Yeah, we had. Well,
And you got an important phone call about that.
That's right, I did. And Bert Lance called me and said, "I was playing tennis with your pastor this morning, and he told me y'all are looking for a chamber executive." And then I said, "Yes, we are." And he said, "Well, I have a man who was in my campaign manager, and he would like to change jobs. Don't hire anybody you hire till you interview him." So I said, "Well, you tell him where does he live?" He said, "He lives in Greenville, Georgia." And I said, "Well, that's south of Georgia." He said, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, you tell him to be here at 2:00 today, and I'll interview him. If he comes at 2:00 today, I'll talk to him." So at 2:00 that afternoon, in walks Tommy Lewis into my office at Ivan Allen, and I sat there and talked to him for about, I guess 5, 6, 8, 10 minutes, and I called Bill Shadden on the phone. I said, "I've just found us a director or
They
chairman."
changed the titles, so now.
Yeah, president,
director.
chairman, whatever. Well, I can't
Chamber
remember. But we changed the titles every time we had a board meeting. But anyway, it was very. Cartersville Bartow County Chamber had always has and always will have a great Chamber of Commerce. It's very important. It's very to our community, and the mayor and the city of Cartersville and the county commissioner, and they all support it in our industry. And so we wouldn't have a lot of industry we have here without them. That's for sure.
Well, Tommy and Patty and you and I went to every chamber meeting in Georgia, I think, to get ideas. He was a great person. But Tommy then went on to
That's right.
Started. What's his claim to fame?
Yes, that's right. He has lots of claims to fame. He put the Georgia State in the football business and the basketball business.
Well, before that, he was Joe Frank Harris's campaign
well, yeah.
manager.
Let me get back to that. Yes. So he and I would go to all the chamber banquets in Cedartown, in Floyd County, and every night we'd go to different places. When they had their year, we'd go see what they were doing. And so we were sitting in my driveway, and I said, well, you know, we got a lot of money, and Joe Frank Harris is going to be running for governor, and it looks like it. You're going to have to give up this job and go. I hope he wants you to be his campaign manager. And so we talked about that in my driveway, and I can tell you that was one of the greatest interviews I ever did, talking to him because it would have happened without me, but Joe Frank was so much better off with him. And so Tommy went on to greater things, and he stayed in Bartow County. He bought a house here and raised his children here, he and his wife, and he's always been a good citizen. And we've got so many people like that that came to Cartersville and did. I was just there having a good time, and they enjoyed it. I never did anything absurd on anything that I didn't enjoy.
Well, I want to, because we're here in this studio at WBHF, and 38 years ago, was it Lee Berger that asked you to go on the Jack Miller show? How did that happen?
Well, Don Ruff was working over there, and Don Ruff was from WKRW. He was my first cousin. Ralph Ruff was my mother's brother, and it was where the R came in, and of course, you know, they had great employees. So I wouldn't. They said they wanted me to come over and do something. I don't know what it was. We talked about it. And so I said, well, let me think it over, and I'll see. And of course, being my cousin trying to get me to do it, and I said, well, Jack Miller, he don't need me. And he said, well, just go over there and talk to him. So when I went in that morning, it was on a Tuesday. He said, what do you want to do? What'd you come talk about? I said, I don't know. I'm just here. And he said, well, I have this. Why don't you be the pilot for the helicopter? And I said, okay, we'll have a shot at that if you want to do it. So they did, and we did, and I don't know, it just caught on. It was something that's totally, and everybody likes to believe in something.
You had convinced a lot of Bartow County listeners that you were actually flying in a helicopter, including your mother and your aunt. They said, we heard you.
Yes, and my mother called me and said, my sister said you were flying in a helicopter and you don't know how to fly a helicopter, so-and-so. But I said, well, Mama, unfortunately, a lot of people like to believe in something, and I think it was an inspiration to them. So we had a lot of listenership, but we did lots of interviews, and I guess when we had a lady come in, Nurse Betty Pan, and I won't call her name because it'd embarrass her, but that was another big highlight we had. We got
Jimmy
a lot
Carter
of
was president, and he had gone into Emory.
To have his hemorrhoids,
yes. Hemorrhoids.
Now he's 95 years old, and I guess he keeps on having them. But
you also had Miss Dutell, and she was a call-in.
And Miss Dutell, and I said she was, did Sue more and Sue often. So yes, and she's now my spiritual leader and has been for many, many years, and I love her to death.
Betty Crane.
Betty Crane.
And then
Cheryl worked with Betty Crane, and she knows.
Then you had Channel 4 had decided to do live bingo.
Yes, that's right. And that's when Herschel and Lee went down. I can't tell you the whole story. I wish I could on this video, but I can't do that about the video about that game. And he said, we're going to have you, and we're going to get colored tickets, and people are going to play. And I had an innate ability back then when my mind was good, before my mind went bad, and memory and people's names. I just can't remember names anymore. And people would walk up to me at the funeral home and say, I knew you so and so and so and so, and I don't have a clue who they are, but somehow I got through it. But talking about that, it was great. Cheryl was there, and we couldn't have done it without her, that's for sure. And then Omar came along, and so we started doing Joe's Kids and different programs, and I really thoroughly enjoyed it, and keeping my job too. But they were great, and Lee Berger said, we don't need to pay you, you got customers. So, and that was true. I guess that helped my business, my office supply business. because we were very, very successful. Well, something was doing it. It wasn't because I was intelligent, but I was having a good time, and I never did want to do anything that I didn't enjoy doing.
Well, people still ask you about you and Betty Crane doing the live broadcasts for the 4th of July parade and Christmas parades, and
I can't.
then Cable 4 sold, and they don't do that now. But people still talk to you about that.
Many times, yes, people say about the parades, and of course, I froze to some seats out there, and I couldn't stand up on some of those parades. And boy, we had the best time in the world. And what we did, we had a captive audience. They didn't have anything else to do. They didn't have cable till we got cable, and then we had all that on the cable, and the country cousins would come to town and get the bingo tickets and go to see the city family, and so they could watch on Channel 4 and try to win these jackpots, because we had big jackpots. We gave cash jackpots.
Well, they'd have to go to different.
That's right. Different
stores to pick up the
advertisers.
ticket.
Yes, and so then I had, back in those days, I had an ability somehow or another. I don't know. I've lost that talent. And I could be talking to somebody, and they said, I'd say, who am I talking to? And I'd say, well, is your Uncle John there? And they said, yeah, he's right here. I mean, I could identify people like when my mama had, but then I had nameophobia. I can't remember anybody's name. But back in those days, I could, and I could put them together. And they thought that I guess they thought I was watching them on the telephone from the studio.
Well, when you going on to a different not business, but employee, about 1998, Ivan Allen was closing their stores.
Right.
And you were about 58, and you were thinking, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And through Ducks Unlimited, which you and Louis Tonsmeyer, you want to tell that story? You went to Carrollton, and you were in auctioneers, and how you met.
We went. Louis and I went from coast to coast. We went everywhere. We would stay up. We'd get home at 4 o'clock in the morning, go to work the next day. And we had the best time you ever seen. We made a lot of friends, and I guess the highlight of all my auctioning and all. And I just got into it because a bank president told me we're gonna have a thing called Ducks Unlimited, and we're gonna have a big show, and they like to get a local auctioneer, and it's gonna be you. And I said, well, I've never auctioned anything before. He said, you don't have to. You get up there and do it, and you'll do fine. Of course, I'd been going to Sam Simmons. Interviewing Sam Simmons, one of the greatest auctioneers I ever heard. And I knew about auctions. I'd been going to auctions all my life. But then I did that and just had the innate ability of making that work, and so it worked out good. So we traveled all over the state and doing auctions, and we had a lot of fun doing it, and we'd be out all night. It didn't pay well at all, but I met a lot of people, and we went as far as Abilene, Texas, and did auctions out there. And I wouldn't. You and I would drive, and Louis would fly. But and we did. And so I guess my greatest claim to fame was I auctioned to 2,200 people in the Atlanta Civic Center, and I sold Dominique Wilkins' old uniform for $4,000, and I had 2,200 people there. And Atlanta Hawks, and Mike Fratello was the coach, and of course I had ringside seats at all the auctions and all that. So he and his wife and I did an auction for her. She was a Republican with the Republican Party, and I did a big banquet for them, and we'd go and do those auctions. And then we got to doing antique auctions. We bought us a tent, and we did a lot of estate sales on the weekends, and I did a lot of auctions for the city and the county, and when I do county auctions, I didn't charge them anything. I'd Frank Moore and Olin and whatever. They couldn't sell property without it being at an auction, and I sold a lot of property where the courthouse is now and all that stuff, and for the city and for the county.
When you went to Carrollton to do Ducks Unlimited, you met Gerald Pilgrim.
Yes.
And he said, and go from there about the funeral home.
And we was talking about the funeral home, and I found out it was a funeral home. I said, well, I always want to work at the funeral home, but I don't want to go to Cartersville. I may not can handle it. So I did. And he said, well, come on down, and we'll see how it works out. Just come to work for us. So I did, and I won't tell you, I just tell you that it worked out really, really great.
Well, then
And
Parnett Jennings
that's
found
right.
out about it.
That's right. Yes, that's right. And he offered me a job, and then I said, well, I'm happy where I am now. But then later on, I decided that I didn't want to drive that far. That I didn't want to be in all the cost of opening the funeral home and all the cemetery and all that kind of stuff. So I called Parnett. I said, you still have a job for me? And he said, would you sign a non-compete agreement? I said, a 5-year non-compete agreement. I said, I signed a lifetime non-compete agreement. I'm not going in the funeral home, and I'm not going to be a competitor or anything. And I've told Steve Owens that too, because my granddaddy, I back up and say, my granddaddy worked for Owens part-time sometime over back in many years ago, before I was...
For Mr. Joe.
Yes,
For
for
Mr.
Mr.
Joe
Joe Owens. And so, I don't know, I liked the funeral business. I just found my niche there, and I enjoyed it a lot, and I still do. And a few weeks ago, I had the privilege of picking up our doctor friend, Brad Ward, at Emory Hospital, and when he passed, and I still like doing the things like that. I don't know. It's a calling that not everybody can do. You just got to. It takes a certain people to do that, and it's tough. It's a tough job, and I tell people all the time, the greatest thing about the funeral business that I remember the most is it's 2:00 in the morning, and it's hail and brimstone and snowing and lightning and thunder and tornado warnings, and you're on this back street in the county, and you're trying to find a house, and you call them on a cell phone. And fortunately, we got cell phones later on down the road, and they said, we're in the red house past the third mailbox past the red, the third house past the red mailbox. And you drive around a few more minutes, you say, look, get out there in the driveway with a flashlight and go up and down, because I can't find the red mailbox or the third house. So it's funny, but everybody thinks that you know where they live. That's the fun part about it, is what I was getting to. But I was very compassionate about things, and I learned a lot, and people, or everybody, no two people has death and dying different. And I've done lots of funerals. I guess the thing that bothered me the most is I could go to an out-of-town funeral for a friend, and I walk in the room, and they say, to meet them, they say, we want you to say my mama's eulogy for my mama today. And I said, look, you giving me 15 minutes? I can't do that. And they said, look, you get up there and say something funny about my mama. I don't care. And so I guess I did. And then I've done them at Owens and other places. And babies, it bothers me a lot to do baby funerals, but I enjoy marrying people too. So we got into that too. But that's all goes together.
Joe, I'm going to back up just a little bit. We talked about us buying property off of Old Hardin Bridge Road that is now Yellow Brick Road, and we moved there. You want to tell about that?
Yeah, we moved there in 1990. I guess we bought it in 1996, and the road was closed years earlier. But it was all grown up, and it just deteriorated and everything. The bridge was in real bad shape, and being that my mother and dad had lived there, my brother was born there, and all my aunts and uncles was raised there, and I was talking to them about the property, and we bought it. We had the opportunity to buy it. And a local man owned it. He had inherited it, and he would never plan. He lives in New York City, and so we traded by fax, and I never met the gentleman. But anyway, so we moved out there, and I don't remember exactly what year we lived. We lived on Cherokee Avenue. Well, we lived on Mission Road, actually. And that was 1996, 1995, somewhere in that neighborhood.
We moved there in 98.
Yeah, we totally moved in 1990. That's right. And so we joined, and we have a cemetery. We have about an acre cemetery there, and we have people that comes from all over following Sherman, because Sherman came through there with 104,000 troops, and we have that up on the bridge, and we have a little sign that says, "Read this sign." And I always wanted to do that so people know exactly where they are, because you forget to tell them things about history. And we have people that come as far away as Nevada following Sherman, and they want to use metal detectors looking for memorabilia, because they knew Sherman crossed the river. He had been there before the war, did I say that? And he knew that bridge was there, and he could cross with his troops. Right. And he had a girlfriend that lived upstream on the Etowah.
Yep.
up on the Etowah River. He wanted to visit her house, and so he came by where we are, and they camped there, but I don't know what they destroyed or didn't destroy. I really don't know what was there, but a lot of people that was born and raised there comes back and would tell me stories about what had happened and their ancestors that lived there, and people. I know some names.
Well,
I won't start naming names. But I'm gonna forget somebody that was born there. But this was a big intersection, and that mill was. And I read a story about the Civil War one time, and a man went down and had some corn ground at Miller's Mill. It was called Miller's Mill. They're the ones that formed it. And that little sign up on the bridge said. You Harley is the Indian word for she laughs as she runs, and that it starts at Martin Hightower. I mean, not Martin Hightower. It starts at Hightower Falls in Polk County and comes down through Aragon and meanders around through Aragon and Rockmart, and then Aragon they take out 7 million gallons a day for Polk County water system at at Deaton's Cave near Taylorsville. So the water has different levels. Today it's all out of the bank, so we're in a flood zone. And we can't have anything in the wintertime. We book nothing in the winter. We close completely, shut down for the winter because the weather is so unpredictable, and we can't have. And we have a lot of mud and grass and all that stuff. But
your fun thing is to marry people.
Yeah.
I'm sure you got sanctified by the internet.
Yeah. And I've done some great weddings and funerals, but weddings and I don't know. I did a wedding one time. It was like a $60,000 wedding in north of here, and so I have traveled.
Not on our property.
Well, on our property, of course.
Right.
But we have a dressing rooms, and we have that. But we don't have any heaters, and we don't have much air conditioning. We are come as you are sort of thing, and it's kind of antebellum theory. And we have, and I say all the time, the most important person at any wedding is the bride's mother's sister. And can I get into that?
No.
Yes, I want to. I'm going to because that's my favorite story. But
well, one of the great things that happened last summer is that the EVHS had one.
Yes, I'm going to get to that. Joe
Okay.
Head and his group, and they're here today and putting this on, and I love them. And I try to go to all their programs too because I went. The last great one I went to was up at Pine Log. And my grandfather lived across the road for them. Yes, Cora Harris. And I have a book my aunt gave me that Cora Harris autographed. I climbed the highest mountain, and it says, Mr. Tilley, thank you for helping get our hay up before the rain.
Your grandfather.
My grandfather,
right.
Excuse me. And my daddy lived there, too.
Right.
Out of near them. So they were real good friends with her. And so, they put on, those guys did a great job with that story. And then when they came to our creek, they had a lot of, they brought Jim Moody. Jim's daddy used to come down to see me all the time, and he'd bring people from Atlanta because he was born there, and he loves that mill. And at one time, his name he wanted me to change it back to Alt Moody, but I said, well, it goes with the person who owned it because the Millers were first, and then other people. And so, Letty Rogers, her daddy, was there, and I mentioned her because she's one of the graves in the cemetery. And when the gas line came through on our property year before last, they spent many megabucks going through that cemetery. I was there every day, and my little friend from the Corps of Engineers came down, Carl Etheridge, and he stayed with them too because I said we're not going to move any of those bodies for a gas line. And so the little church was across the road. And it was, they like Baptists do, they had a little falling out and they moved over to
Raccoon Creek.
Raccoon Creek, they merged with them.
Well, the church burned.
That's right, the church burned. But where we intersect there, where the road, then there's a lot of roads that came into that area because this was a big deal. And the Conyers would cut, they owned all the land like out to the Indian Mounds, and they had Conyers subdivision, but when they would cut timber to develop new property for farming, they would bring the timber to our place, and they made charcoal. They had a charcoal factory, and my Uncle Dave, who Smith Gin Company, John Deere, all his life. He would come and tell me things about what was going on, and he and I was looking for the charcoal factory, and we couldn't find it. So then years later, about 3 years ago, I was mowing the grass, and the fire ants told me where it was. I was mowing along, and I saw some red fire ant hills, and then I go about 10 or 15 feet, and I see some black fire ant hills, and I said, aha, that's charcoal. And so that's why I finally, but I don't have any markings there or anything, but people come and tell me that they was born there or they was raised there, and we have churches, and we saw 34 Methodists baptized one Sunday, and we got, I won't start naming churches' names, but we have different religions, and we've had weddings, and we've had got 2 churches that baptize in the wintertime, and I say, I'm come to see y'all baptized because y'all got a whole lot more faith than I do to get in that cold water.
In November. All right. I want you to think about the best advice that you did not take that you wish years later you had.
A bunch of those. That'll be a whole
But
page.
there was one in particular.
What are you referring to?
There was one in particular, and this man called you years ago and said, I want you to buy property in Emerson and get all this, live there, move there. Tell that story.
I hope he don't listen to this program.
Well, he might. But live there. He wanted you to get on the city council and buy property in Emerson.
He said, I'm going to give you a piece of advice. You go and move to Emerson, and you buy every piece of property you can buy and get you a business, and one day Emerson's going to be bigger than Rome, Georgia, or Cartersville, or anybody else. So then 30 years later, I walked in his office, and he was just dying laughing. He said, I've been waiting for you. He said, I knew you was going to say you didn't take your own advice.
Because that's the day Lake Point announced. Right. And you knew that Emerson was going to change forever.
That's right, and it will. And U Harley's going to change forever. Now they're getting ready to put in a campground, and we have a solar. We went to a meeting the other night. We got a great city council down there, and we got a great little village, and it's really nice, a sleepy little town, and a lot of people come to see that bridge. That's so important that we restore history. History is a mystery, and it gives you insight into the future, you know.
Well, it is. They're going to have a very nice downtown restaurant real soon. They have a great bakery. They have a tea room. There's a lot going for. They have the Mexican restaurant right there off of U Harley Road. So a lot of things. Anna's. It's a lot of good things for U Harley. Well, where do you think Bartow's going to look like in 30 years?
I don't have a clue. I don't know. We're gonna have. We need another bridge. I have to mention the bridge because that was. I had so many people upset with me about that bridge, and unfortunately, they
on Church Street.
On Church Street, we built that when I was the chairman of the board of the
chamber,
or whatever the chamber, and I had people ill with me about that for many years, and we went through all that route. As you know, we had people, marching in the dark about it, but. Anyway, we had to have it, and I didn't want it there. I wanted it to be on Main Street. I wanted to widen Main Street because and I don't know, that park those dually trucks in there and those big trucks, and it's so dangerous, and it wasn't planned out for all the traffic we have now. So, and I was telling the mayor the other day, we have a very fine mayor. We've had lots of good mayors in the past, but now we have a super nice mayor, and he's pro progress, and he's done so much for our community. I have to give him a plug. I hate to brag on him, but I will, because he's done a great job.
You're talking about Matt Santana.
I'm going to get to that in a minute. Matt Santana, and the boy married well is what I was going to say. He married him a job is what he did, like I did. But anyway, he won't admit that. So, but he's doing the county and works so good with the city, and the city works together. And I remember one of the worst things that I ever saw it happen in our community is the government went over to the county commissioner and said, we're going to close this post office and we're going to sell it to the county for $1. And the county commissioner looked at him and said, are you crazy? Do you think we ever going to need that property we're not paying $1 for that old post office. Well, that's City Hall now, and because Walter Mahone and whoever, I give him a credit because he was the city manager at that time, and a lot of good of our forefathers. We've had some great mayors, and I won't start naming mayors and councilmen, but we're so fortunate to have Cartersville. And I guess one day I was at one of the strangest things that ever happened to me. I was at Berry Schools, and the president of Berry Schools said, "Just think, the little city of Cartersville, they have interstate now. They've opened that road up and so on forth, and few years later when we hit, whatever we hit 1 million people, I wanted to call her and say, the little city of Cartersville just passed you.
Right, it's larger than
yeah, I was upset about that.
Well, what do you want to be remembered for?
For paying my debts.
Having a good time?
That's right. I had it. Oh yes, I will tell you right now, I had a good time. If it wouldn't do any good, if I'm doing something not having fun, I'm not going to do it. Well, I guess working at the Indian Mounds, and I worked out there when I was out there in the Indian Mounds, and they had a little postcard out there. They sold it for a nickel, and I was on the front of that little postcard, and so thousands of people bought a picture of me down in that mound digging.
And you were about 17.
I was 16, 17, yeah.
And you say, what kind of program was it?
Well, people said, what was you? And I said, I'm a pilot. And they said, you a pilot? I said, yeah, they got a wheelbarrow. They fill it up with dirt and say, okay, boy, pilot over there. And I had to run up a 10-inch board with a bucket load of a wheelbarrow load of that dirt and putting it. And so we had a museum over in the Braben Hotel, and if it was raining, I worked up there sorting out the body, sorting out the bones and the skeletons and all this kind of finding. And there is a duckhead water bottle in the museum that I found out there in Mound B one time. I know that for sure, but I didn't have a camera like I have now. I didn't take any pictures of it, but it's there. And Mr. Henley Tomlin and I were great friends, and I ate lunch with he and his wife many days out there. But I would hitchhike to Cartersville. I'd ride with Horace Haynes. He worked out there, and then I would hitchhike back to Taylorsville School and go to school and go back until I got a job. I really wanted to work there, and I just thought it was great. And I met lots and lots of people, and they believe anything you tell them because they don't know the difference anyway. All the tourists, I don't know how many goes now, but we're so fortunate to have Lake Allatoona. And I remember in 1948 when the dam opened, and we went up there, and I just think we're so fortunate. We are the best kept secret in Georgia as far as I'm concerned.
Well, if you notice the traffic on Friday afternoon, we're no secret anymore. It's getting crowded, isn't it, Joe?
And I tell people all the time, if you are in Cartersville and it starts sleeting and snowing, rush home. Rush home, grab you some groceries, clean out, do not move. We're just like a bunch of Methodists in the swimming pool. We just go crazy. You just can't do it.
Yeah, the snow was beautiful this morning.
That's
Everybody
right.
wanted to stay home.
That's right.
Joe, we could talk forever.
I don't want to do that.
I know.
These
And you had so many-
ladies are busy. They're on the payroll. We're not.
Well, we do want to thank Cheryl Kennedy and Ernestine Jones and.
I remember Ernestine when she was she won't give me no credit for that when she was working at a local carpet manufacturer, making her fortune, and I'd say, Ernestine, you need to go to work at WBHF, and she did. She won't give me any credit for it, but I love her.
And in the background is Judy Kilgore, who is over
Judy.
the oral history.
And I knew Judy when she
And
worked
we
at the
do want to
courthouse.
thank them for coming down here on this cold Saturday and taking time to share Joe Tilley's history and the insight into growing up in Bartow County. And on behalf of the EVHS, I appreciate you, Joe, providing this interview.
Well, I didn't get to say anything about Tellus and History Museum, and the next thing coming up, I gotta say something nice about Savoy, because they're coming out of the dirt, and that's going to be great. I can't wait for that to happen. We have everything. Thank you, Cheryl.